We start today in Puerto Rico, where new requirements have been put in place for local and international travelers entering the territory. This comes during concern of the new Omicron variant. Francis Felix reports.
Starting Monday, December 6, every passenger that enters to Puerto Rico, no matter what is their vaccination status or destination, have to complete the travel destination form. The new measures states that any passenger arriving from a domestic flight not fully vaccinated will have to present a negative test from 72 hours previous to their arrival as part of the Executive Order 2021-037. Also, the passengers that fail to comply the proof will have to be tested during the first 48 hours after they arrive and share their results in the declaration form. With this new measure, the Department of Health seeks to reinforce their vigilance in the airports due to the newest Omicron variant with the SARA alert system, a system that allows to monitor the travel's symptoms. With this tool, the health department have been able to monitor approximately 4.9 million passengers that arrived to the island since July 12 of 2020 and detected almost 6,800 positive cases. In addition, Health and Voces of Puerto Rico will carry out a massive vaccination event called Vacutrulla for children between the ages 5 to 11 and booster shots for the adults. The initiative seeks to reach as many persons as possible before the Christmas festivities and the threat of Omicron reaching the island. Reporting from San Juan, Puerto Rico, Francis Felix.
All right, thanks, Francis. Well, it's a similar story on the U.S. mainland. Tighter travel restrictions kicked in for international travelers entering the United States. All visitors must now show proof of a negative COVID-19 test taken within 1 day of travel instead of the usual 3 days. The move is all part of President Biden's plan to control the spread of the new Omicron variant. In addition, the president has also extended the mask requirement for buses, trains, and domestic planes through March. And meantime, Puerto Rico is leading the way on U.S. COVID vaccinations. That's despite being struck by a hurricane and an earthquake just before the pandemic hit. More than 70% of its population is fully vaccinated, way ahead of the U.S. average. The former mayor of San Juan explains why Puerto Rico has had success.
This was never weaponized. And as we know from hurricanes Irma and Maria and everything that Puerto Rico went through in the last 4 years, when politicians use for political gains this type of crises, people die. So from the beginning, the Puerto Rican government, past administration, current administration, and its 78 municipalities, we knew from the beginning that this was not about politics, this was about saving lives. Because again, we had lived that from the 4 years before that. The second thing is that it was science-based and science-centered planning, meaning that at the central level, state level, and at the local municipal levels, we all looked at the science. And mind you, at the beginning, March 2020, things changed completely. From one day to another, the information was different. But we all made it very clear that we were going to follow what the doctors were telling us. I remember having a meeting with the municipal council of doctors and nurses and epidemiologists and saying, this is a crisis that is health-led, so you're going to tell me what to do and how to move forward. That allowed governments, municipal level, communities, and the central government to be able to, from the onset, put together swift and decisive actions.
And switching gears now, an investigation is underway into an incident in which an elderly retired police officer in Barbados was able to leave the country's Grantley Adams International Airport and travel on an American Airlines flight with a loaded gun in his pocket. The security breach was discovered by the Transportation Security Administration at the Miami International Airport when 83-year-old Cameron Hines sent his briefcase through a security screening ahead of his connecting flight to Orlando. A TSA X-ray operator discovered the .32 caliber weapon loaded with 5 rounds in the case. Hines, who was arrested by Miami-Dade police and charged with carrying a concealed weapon, told police that after he went through customs, he remembered the gun in his pocket and put it in his carry-on before reaching the TSA checkpoint. The United States Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Embassy in Bridgetown are investigating the incident along with Barbados National Security Council. Prime Minister Mia Mottley, who chairs the National Security Council, said heads will roll.
I have requested urgently a report, which I expect to receive very, very soon. But as I said before, somebody or bodies will be held accountable. This notion that people can do things that are in breach of the law or in breach of acceptable standards and get away with impunity is not going to stand, and the consequences for the country are grave and great. So let us be very clear that those breaches will be dealt with.
And meantime, a cruise ship with COVID-positive people on board is now docked in New Orleans after at least 17 people tested positive for COVID-19, with at least one of them being a probable case of the Omicron variant. The Norwegian Breakaway left New Orleans on November 28th, stopping in Belize, Honduras, and New Mexico. Paul Dudley reports.
The Norwegian Breakaway back at the Port of New Orleans Sunday morning. The cruise line says COVID-19 cases were found among its crew members and passengers. Everyone on board had to be vaccinated and tested before getting on, but still a handful came down with COVID.
We are told the cruise line followed CDC guidelines by isolating all of the positive passengers, but also by testing everyone before they got off the ship.
Last night about 7, they said everybody's got to be tested all of a sudden. We all have to be tested, and they were making us all go. We were in the middle of our dinners, shows, everything.
Adding to the confusion, passengers say they were not told about the positive cases.
They tested us and left us. We never knew last night. Nobody ever knew. This morning on the news, people started seeing it.
No, we didn't know anything about an outbreak on the ship.
We heard when we got to port and had cell phone service and saw the news.
We asked Norwegian why passengers weren't notified, but they did not get back to us with an answer in time for this story. Passengers we spoke to say they have questions as to why they weren't told, especially since masks were not required.
Everybody just standing there with no mask on, and then all of a sudden 10 people's positive on the ship. Nobody told us last night or today.
I guess I can understand both ways. I guess they didn't want to incite riot by telling all the passengers, but still in all, I guess I would have liked to know.
Norwegian says all of the identified cases on board are asymptomatic.